your class, but still with global warming and all those touchy subjects, evolution and genetic testing, that's something that everybody doesn't want to talk about. So sometimes they monitor what you say and how you say it. All right, so this is going to be live streamed today. All right, so let me come back here for those of you who just joined. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. All right, so as far as the 9-week test is concerned, this is a Canvas view of the topics that are covered on the 9-week test. So it is Unit 4 in AP Classroom. We did not spend a lot of time talking about watershed and solar radiation, and but you can click and see what you need to know about those. And really and truly, there was only, oops, one more person. There was really only one question that you need to worry about as far as that's concerned, and solar radiation. The bulk of the activity is the other questions. All right, so this is your Canvas view of what you should know. What I was explaining earlier before I paused for all the folks who just came in is that what you need to do today is make sure that you've done 4.8 and 4.9 assignments. That's due today. Once you finish that, or if you've already finished that, go ahead and I'm pulling up the assignment now so I can show you what I'm talking about. Okay, so you have been assigned 4.8 and 4.9. There are 3 questions with 4.8 and 4 questions with 4.9. So in the grade book, you're going to have 1 column, and I'm combining the 7 points for those 2 assignments. Yeah, that's kind of due today. But don't worry about it. Everything has to be due by Friday. That's the Lighthouse announcement that all grades have to be due by Friday. So this assignment technically is due Friday. Instead of doing a test, I'm just going to do the progress check. If the MCQ has, I think it's 37 questions. So I'm going to let that be the test. Okay, and you know it includes a calculator inside the thing. So yes, they're actually just 27 questions. All right, so this is going to be the test, and it's already open, so you can get started on that. And then on Friday, I'm saving the essay question for Friday. So on Friday, you will look at this question, and this is the question that you have to do a written answer for, and it's 1 question, but it has several parts. So I am saving that one for Friday. Now, this question does have, yes, you will. This question does have question about watershed. Okay, so do look at that before you go in, but then that's the rest of it is about everything else. So there is a piece about the watershed, but I think we've covered this as far as soils and something else we did earlier in the year. So this may not be as strange a question as you think, but do look at the watershed unit just to give you an idea of how to answer that question. Okay, so that's assigned for Friday, and that's the test as far as I'm concerned. I'm not creating another whole unit test in AP Classroom for this 9 weeks. Okay, all right. Questions, what's the name for 4.8, 4.9? 4.8 is Earth's geography and climate, and 4.9 is El Nino and El Nino. But in the grade book, it's you need to go to AP Classroom for that. And then I'm going to take the grade from AP Classroom and put it in the grade book. So it's not something that you're going to find in Canvas. I will take the grade from here and put it in the AP Classroom. So I don't know what your report card looks like, but for me, and I don't normally like sharing everybody's business, but this is what it looks like for me. So I know that most of you have watched the videos, but I also know that you need to answer the questions. So that's what it looks like for me. So what I do is I take the grade from here and I transfer it to the grade book. Okay, so that's how I get that score. All right, that being said, let me stop sharing everybody's business. Uh, that being said, I'm going to stop talking so that you can take care of business. Okay. Again, the videos, so that I put videos for every unit in the YouTube playlist, in addition to the ones that are in the AP classroom. So you are welcome to look at any of those. So there are videos actually in the playlist for um, the, let me go back to course guide for. Okay, so so there are videos for all of these, including watershed and radiation. I put all of those videos in the AP classroom. I mean, the YouTube playlist has all of those videos listed. But I did not assign these two for you. So these two you might, yeah, I did not assign 4.7 or 4.6. I did not assign those in the AP classroom. So if you want to watch those videos, you're going to have to watch them from the YouTube playlist. Okay. In fact, let me come out of this for a minute. Let me just do the watershed one with you so that we can say that we covered it. Because of that question, I want to make sure that everybody at least watches that one. Okay, so give me 1 minute to pull up. Um, okay. All right. So we're going to watch the 4 point, the watershed question. Again, we're watching that because I want to make sure that you get enough information to answer the question on Friday. So let's watch that one together. Nice to see everybody today. We don't always see everybody. All right, so stop whatever you're doing and watch this one, and then I'll stop talking and let you. Oops. Okay, what happened to the sound?
Land that all drains into a central body of water. That body of water could be a river, a lake, or a stream. And watersheds are going to be determined by slope. And so what do I mean by that? You can think of a watershed as almost like a giant funnel of land that's all going to drain downward due to the force of gravity pulling runoff towards the central body of water. So if we take a look at this diagram, if water were to fall just on the right side of this ridge, it's going to trickle down and due to gravity run off into this river. Now if it falls to the left of this dotted line here, it's going to follow the slope and go into a different watershed. And so watershed boundaries are basically determined by slope. You can think of it as if a drop of water lands on this piece of land, which body of water will it run off into? There's some other factors that are important to consider when we think about watersheds, and those would be soil composition, vegetation, and slope. So the more vegetation that a watershed has, basically the more infiltration we're going to have, and so rainwater will be slowed, it will be taken into the ground, the roots will absorb some, but the plants will also make the ground a little bit more permeable, make it easier for that groundwater to infiltrate rather than to run off. Then we have slope. So the greater the slope, the faster the velocity of the runoff. And so it has a little bit more inertia or a little bit more steam, you could think. It's got a head of steam to pick up, soil or debris or any sort of, sediments that are on the ground and carry them into this body of water. Then finally, we have soil permeability. And so how permeable the soil is impacts whether or not water is running off or whether or not it is infiltrating and recharging groundwater. So that would affect the rate at which water runs off of the watershed and into the central body of water. And it may also impact the sorts of pollutants that it's gathering or the sediments that it's washing in. And the final thing we have to consider here is that human activities in a watershed directly determine the quality of water in that watershed. And that's because actions like mining or agriculture or clear cutting can produce pollutants or can loosen soil. And that means that the runoff entering the body of water will carry those pollutants or carry those sediments into the body of water.
Oh, whoops. I was trying to catch him before he switched. All right, that's an important part right there. Okay, so keep that in mind because when you answer that question, as you see, the picture looks very similar to that. But you have to keep in mind what human activities do in order to affect where the water starts and what's going to happen. Because if you're looking at this picture, you got at the top of the stream, you've got a urban development, you've got a farm a little further down, you've got a parking lot runoff, you've got this little wetland area, and you've got another little factory down here near the dam. That's not really the factory, but the power plant that's running the dam. So all of these things you have to be aware of when you look at what is on the land and what is actually going into this body of water and where does it enter? Who's going to have the people up here on the top of the hill probably going to have the freshest water, but as you go downstream, all of these entities are adding their runoff into this water supply. So you need to keep that in mind when you're looking at that question.
Soil, and that means that the runoff entering the body of water will carry those pollutants or carry those sediments into the body of water. Next, we'll take a look at one of the largest watersheds in America, and that is the Chesapeake Bay watershed. So this is a 6-state region where all of the bodies of water, the rivers, the streams, all eventually collect and empty into the Chesapeake Bay. Why does this matter? Why do we care about the Chesapeake Bay watershed? Well, it's a great way to study the ecosystem services and the value that these habitats can provide. And so a reminder that an estuary such as the Chesapeake Bay is a mixture of salt and fresh water. So a lot of nutrients and a lot of sediments from all of these tributaries are collecting and emptying into estuary habitats here in the bay, such as a salt marsh. And so here's a picture of a salt marsh. You can see the grasses and kind of the low meandering water line. It's a really productive habitat. And because it's so productive, it offers a lot of ecosystem services. Remember, ecosystem services are things that have monetary benefit to humans. And so tourism is one. People are going to come and stay in hotels and pay to go on tours here and just spend their time hiking and enjoying the natural beauty. There's a lot of water filtration too, though. So we don't have to filter as many pollutants out of our water because estuary habitats and wetlands are really effective at trapping pollutants in their roots and recharging groundwater with more clean water than if they weren't there. We also have habitats. So there are all sorts of animals here, such as crabs and other shellfish that.
All right, I wanted to pause it right there because that part about water filtration in an estuary is very important as far as clean water is concerned. They kind of filter themselves.
Can be harvested from these habitats and they are the breeding ground for them. So without them, We wouldn't enjoy nearly as much seafood. A lot of people would not have jobs and restaurants would lose revenue. And then finally, we have stormwater protection as well. And so it can basically act as kind of an overflow or a surge protection in the event of a large storm. Then we have a nice picture here of some kayakers. I'm a big fan of canoeing and kayaking, so you can remember that, you know, people like to canoe and like to kayak in these bodies of water, and so that's a great way for tourism revenue to flow into an area. Now we'll take a look at some of the human impacts on the Chesapeake Bay ecosystem. So the first one is nutrient pollution. Now, nutrient pollution refers to excess nitrogen and phosphorus entering a body of water, leading to something called eutrophication. So eutrophication is when we have an algae bloom due to all of these excess nutrients entering the body of water. Remember that nitrogen and phosphorus are often limiting nutrients, and so when we add an excess of them, it leads to this explosion of algae growth. We can see here in the picture, we have this algae blooming because of all of these nutrient inputs. The problem is that this will block the sun, and so that plant.
Okay. Ad place for a
March
commercial.
21st. Only one movie is the
And the weirdest commercials.
And so that plants underneath the surface are not getting the sunlight they need to photosynthesize. They will die, and then bacteria in the water will start to break them down. Now, because that's an aerobic process, it uses up oxygen. Those bacteria will take up a lot of the oxygen that other organisms in the water need to survive. That leads to those organisms dying. Then we basically have a positive feedback loop where more and more oxygen is consumed, so more and more organisms die. And we call this, again, a positive feedback loop. It can lead to something called hypoxia, which is really low oxygen levels, and they can get so low that it's effectively a dead zone, meaning that we really don't have much life able to be supported by this body of water anymore. So what are the sources of these nutrient inputs into bodies of water? Well, one would be the discharge of water from sewage treatment plants. So we can see here in a picture that all of our wastewater, so water that we flush down the toilet, is going to end up at this water treatment plant. Now, there are several steps in these water treatment plants designed to remove all the nutrients from our wastewater, but it's impossible to always get that down to zero. And so there's going to be some inputs of nutrients, especially if these plants overflow. Now, that's not ideal, but sometimes in really heavy rain situations, these facilities do flood and they do release raw sewage directly into a body of water. And so then you have, of course, really, really elevated nutrient levels entering the body of water. Agriculture is going to be another source here. So we can see that the runoff from CAFOs, so all of the manure lagoons that contain the waste of animals, those are going to, of course, have a lot of nutrients in them, both nitrogen and phosphorus. And then we can also just get the synthetic nitrate fertilizers running off of agricultural fields. And so between wastewater treatment and agriculture, those are going to be two of the main drivers of nutrients entering bodies of water. There are some other pollutants we should consider, and those would be endocrine disruptors. So remember from our previous video that endocrine disruptors can be medications that just pass through the bodies of people and go to the wastewater treatment plant and aren't quite fully removed. We could also have sediment pollution, and so things such as clear cutting or urbanization or farming, those are all going to lead to sediments being more loose and being more easily carried into the river. Here's a picture that can demonstrate how dramatic this effect can be. So you can see from an aerial image just how different the water's color is, and so that's going to decrease rates of photosynthesis. It's going to make the water warmer because it has a lower albedo and it's going to absorb more sunlight. But what we can also see here is that it's going to potentially cover up the rocky stream bottom that many organisms need in order to survive. So this is a great example of a stream bottom here that is not impacted by sediment pollution. You can see how there's all of these little crevices underneath these rocks where tiny crustaceans or other macroinvertebrates will live. But when we get a lot of sediment pollution, those habitats can basically be covered over by all of these sediments coming in. Now we'll take a look at some solutions to these pollutants entering bodies of water. And so if we take a look at C and at A in this diagram, these are two methods that could be used to reduce nutrient inputs from agriculture. So cover crops are a great strategy that you hopefully remember from our sustainable farming unit or our sustainable farming topic back in Unit 5. But a cover crop is going to be basically using some plant in between the main crops that you're harvesting just to kind of hold the soil in place, anchor it, and keep those sediments and the fertilizer on your field from running off into bodies of water. So you can see if you're continually planting a cover crop each season, it's just going to do a phenomenal job of preventing runoff from entering these bodies of water. It traps the runoff, it lets it infiltrate back into the soil, it uses up some of those excess nitrates, and so a really effective solution. You can also try to adopt better animal manure management practices. So this could involve a manure lagoon that's lined better, that has higher banks or berms to kind of contain that manure. Could be a system that even drains it more frequently and turns it into fertilizer pellets. And then if we look at B, another really good generalized strategy is riparian buffers. Riparian habitats or riparian areas refer to the areas alongside a body of water, such as a river. And so when you plant vegetation in riparian habitats, what you're doing is adding in basically a giant sponge or a giant filter so that the runoff entering that body of water has gone through all of this vegetation first. The roots are going to absorb a lot of the water. Depending on what kind of plants you use, the roots may be really effective at even trapping pollutants in their root structures and then metabolizing them or just preventing them from making it into that body of water. And so riparian buffers are a really valuable strategy for kind of reducing these pollutants entering bodies of water. If we look at letter D and at letter F, these are both going to target human sewage. And so we can have septic tank upgrades. A septic tank is where you just have a tank in your backyard that collects your waste. And depending on how we optimize the drain field to more slowly, drain the sewage out, it can just allow that to be filtered more naturally by the ground and prevent it from overflowing and contaminating nearby surface waters. And then we can also have biological waste removal. So that's where there are microbes that are going to be eating a lot of the waste and trying to utilize a lot of those nutrients to prevent those from being released into the river. And so just a ton of different options for trying to reduce nutrient and sediment inputs into bodies of water.
Okie dokie. I look different.
Hey everybody, it's Mr. Smeeds, and today we'll be covering topic 4.7.
Okay, we're not.
Which is solar radiation and seasons. So before we get into things, we need to know that the term insolation.
Okay, so this is in your playlist. So you don't have to watch it, but because I don't think there's too many questions that deal with this one. But these are topics that you've had already. So like I said, we've covered eutrophication was a vocabulary word that you should be familiar with, in my AP classroom times out very quickly. So again, for the folks who just came in late, the test on Friday and starting tomorrow is on Unit 4. So as you can see, watershed and solar radiation are part of that, but solar radiation, not so much. It's the other topics that you need to be more concerned with. So this is considered it's a study guide, but it's just basically a list of points that you need to remember. So you should give this some attention as far as the important points that you need to look at. So I'm going to stop talking so that you can finish working on 4.8, 4.9 in AP Classroom. And again, if you finish that, you can go ahead and get started on the unit progress check. And again, I'm going to count that as the end of term test and not create a new test. Okay, so, but you can start on that when you get ready. I left the other question for Friday so that you have something to do on Friday. You have a reason to come to class on Friday. A reminder that all late work is due by this Friday as well. Those of you who need to catch up on something. For you all, I'll extend it at next Tuesday, the latest. The 11th is the latest I can do late work. But that's it because grades are due on Thursday. So I can't take anything after the 11th as far as late work is concerned. Okay. All right. Again, I will stop talking, let you get to work. And do attendance. All right, Ariana, you came in a little late. We are in the AP classroom. We're making sure that you complete 4.8, 4.9. All right, William, are you with us? Thank you. All right, Sadie and Journey, don't forget that you need to turn in the Gizmo lab on the Coriolis effect. Okay. And I do apologize. I thought it was on focus mode. Some of you have deliberately elected to be off camera. Journey, check your message for me, please, in the chat. What in the world? Still not coming up. Okay, folks, if you have no questions for me, I'll see you all tomorrow and we'll wrap up anything that needs to be wrapped up tomorrow. Y'all have a great afternoon. Enjoy this warmish weather.